Hello and welcome back to the Green Heart Wellbeing Podcast. This is episode 8, and today we're going to tackle the taboo subject of money, especially in the wellbeing world. I've met a lot of counsellors and therapists, and definitely within the region that I'm in, there's a lot of pro bono work that's requested. And as a founder, I want to kind of delve into that and why it's different from when I was doing things while I was also working as a teacher. So today we're talking about that money, honey, and the ups and downs of being self-employed, being the founder of a company. So there's a lot to talk about, but I'll try and not make it too long. But I hope that this is an interesting episode. As always, when you see me, if you're watching it, I'm looking off to the right because I've got all my notes that I've scribbled down throughout the week. So when I was leaving teaching, one of the big things that I'd prepared for was just that, finances. So if you work within the UAE, you'll know that you get a kind of end of service gratuity. So because I worked in a good school and the gratuity package was great, I'd factored that into leaving. So I did quite a lot of the numbers throughout the years, and I was able to think about savings that I might use or some portion of the gratuity that I might use. And I worked out what I would need to survive, bills, mortgage payment, things like that. Car, pet food, all of the things that I would need if I never earned a penny for a certain amount of time. And for me, that certain amount of time was a year. And that was living budget, nothing frivolous, no getting my nails done and stuff like that. So it was an amount that I would have needed to live. So fortunately then, that's when I started working for the Free Spirit Collective. Now, at the beginning, because of the model of the business, it's kind of like some industries, like real estate, it's what you work is what you earn kind of thing. So starting as a new coach, I had to build up client base, build up clubs and different elements of that. I also was really lucky that they trusted me for a point to do the communications and marketing section of that wellbeing company. Was great, and again, a lot of my transferable skills from teaching led me to be able to do that. So I'd set up a newsletter, podcast, some social media, different things like that. So I had some income from there. So my plan to cover the year was actually a great backup plan, but also I didn't have to not earn for a year, if that makes sense. I was already able to find different ways to earn. But cue 2 and a bit years later when I founded Green Heart Wellbeing. So this time I was a bit braver in the sense that I didn't really look into my financials the same way. Obviously I did to an extent, but I knew that there was going to be periods of time where there would be unsteady income, like it was before once I left teaching, because obviously in teaching you get your monthly salary, you get a housing allowance if you work in the UAE, things like that. That was totally different. So although I was under a company visa and health insurance and things like that, the income was sporadic and different. So now, being under my own visa, my own trade license, own health insurance, all those bits and pieces, the income again is it fluctuates wildly. So that brings me to the first point, the leap from a steady salary to uncertainty. So there are ups and downs. There are ups termly when I have club sign-ups and things like that. There are periods of time that I need to budget and prepare for example, the summer. So because it's our first, I keep saying my first year as a startup, I had to bank personally for June, July, August, not having as much income. To be totally honest with you, not having any income because I hadn't set up any summer camps or anything like that. I wanted to go home and meet my new nephew and spend the summer in Scotland. So that's what I did, and be with my family and friends. This year will be different. I'm planning to do camps for the winter break, for spring break, and then summer break. So it will look a bit different, but again, it comes back to that's part of the ups and downs of this line of or this company that I've chosen to build, this line of work that I've chosen to earn through. So there are long stretches where I don't have income, or have been since the beginning, which was the summer. But again, in terms of business development and business planning, I already knew that was going to be a part of it. So I had planned for that in advance. Now that I'm a bit more used to running the company and how things work, I've been able to forecast periods of time. So those will be times that I'll have the camps prepared. I've started offering different things. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But I think it's important to share that anyone who's thinking about founding their own thing, or leaving a career for a new change, it's having that financial planning in place, in a sense. Now, there is a whole aspect of wellbeing science, financial wellbeing, but I could maybe talk about that in another episode. But I think it's important in my context to share that, because it is such a big part. It can also be a huge blocker for people. It's just thinking about money is a scary thing, it's a scary thing to talk about, and it's scary to not have any, so it's an important one to kind of mention. The second point, this is what I wanted to kind of bring up, was thinking more about diversifying the income streams. Now, that's a very Instagram hustle business way of putting it, but it's thinking about different ways to earn and really pushing myself to think about the different skills that I have and being able to utilise them properly. So when I think about doing communications and marketing role, I think I did it for a year, also while coaching and things like that. It was really being able to apply the skills that I had in a different area, and also someone trusting me with those skills, which comes down to who you are and the relationships that you've built. So all of that stuff is important, so think about, if you are within education, relationship building, that networking, that really matters. And again, authenticity comes into that. So I've really had to think about different ways to bring income in. And of course, initially that is the school clubs. So everything, the clubs that I've ran always since leaving teaching have always been my own creation. I haven't taken clubs from anyone else's mind. I've combined the well-being, positive psychology stuff that I really believe that children need to learn, or I want them to learn, combined with teaching experience to make the clubs what they are. And I've got some colleagues that now also run clubs under Green Heart Wellbeing, who are also former teachers. And I think they'll agree, if we ever bring them onto an episode, which would actually be lovely, is when you don't have the actual stress of what it means to being a teacher, and you get to be with the children for an hour teaching and learning about the things that is really important to you. In this case, it's well-being and positive psychology. It's a joy, getting to teach with the children, and just do that for me is an absolute dream. So for that, at the minute, for Green Heart to be one of the biggest portions of the business that brings in the money is brilliant, and also the way that it works for me is when the clubs, the club check comes in for the term from a school or whatever, I pay myself the same percentage that I pay the colleagues that work for me, and then the other percentage, not work for me, work with me. That was a real horrible way to put it. I don't mean that. I mean the colleagues that work with me. The percentage that I take for the business goes into the business pot, and that's the same for myself. So I only take the same, if that makes sense. My own livelihood from the clubs is the same as what the others earn from the clubs at Green Heart, and then a little percentage goes into the business, because I've had to think that way now. Not only do I need money to pay my bills, so I work for that as such by running the clubs, the other percentage goes into the business pot, and then that gets into other things for marketing, for other aspects of the business, which is one of the other streams that I want to share. So for example, women's circles. So I'm going to start hopefully a group. Again, the space that we're running it in is a really beautiful nursery in Jumeirah called Little Lands Nursery, and I met the owner at the Irish Business Network, and she's a brilliant woman who sees the value in what I'm offering, but also it's I want to bring people to see what she's built. So again, there's this whole lovely partnership that I'm finding a lot of like women in business offer, So a women's circle there, it's going to be based on positive psychology, character strengths, which to me, I could talk about it for ever and ever and ever. But this 2-hour workshop is going to be an introduction to character strengths. So again, it's taken me to kind of dig in to offer that, because I've been to really brilliant women's circles and I've met some really great friends through them, and I admire how they're run and what they offer, and I've never really felt capable of making a space like that for people. But then I had to really think about, well, you need to do both. It's important for me to make a space that people can learn about their strengths, and I also need to earn, so why not use the skills of teaching and what I know about strengths and bring it to a group who are willing to invest in themselves, but also willing to invest in their belief in me to teach them something about that, or make space for them to learn something like that. So yeah, women's circles is like a new income stream. I've always done coaching for children since I left teaching, so one-to-one wellbeing coaching, which is predominantly in schools, but that's another element of income. So taking the wellbeing, positive psychology things that we do in the clubs, but tailoring it more personally to the child that comes to see me. And again, coaching for adults. Like I say, I always get clients who predominantly have been in education, or are looking for a career change, or are looking to have different wellness opportunities within their life. And I don't mean like, obviously, massage and everything, which is lovely, but I'm talking about more of the internal mental interventions and practices and rituals that you can do to help yourself. And then another income stream that I've mentioned is going to be the camps. So hopefully be able to run winter camps. I'm going to stay here in Dubai for Christmas time. The kids are off for 4 weeks, which will mean I'll have 3 weeks roundabout to offer some camps. So it's a bit scary, because the problem or the issue that I'm facing is always getting the sign-ups. But I knew there was going to be this challenge, but it's different when you're kind of in the thick of it. It can be pretty hard, and that's where I'm at just now. So those are the 4 main ways that I've got just now. And the point that I wanted to make is it's not relying on one, which at the beginning was the clubs, but it's weaving together different offerings and really pushing myself to be creative, to create things that I think people will enjoy and will benefit them, and also pushing myself to utilize the skills that I have, Okay, so the next thing I wanted to mention was the money mindset. Now, this is such a thought-provoking one. I've met many people in the last 3 years, who run their own companies. Some of the companies are massive. They run really successful ventures. And I've met people who are in the same stage as me, and I've met people in between. I feel like I need to say this carefully. What I feel like I've noticed is there's like a really divine feminine approach to business and a masculine approach to business. And I'm not talking about the difference between male and female. I'm talking about the divine feminine and the divine masculine elements that we have of ourselves. So we should, like yin yang, we should have a balanced energy of both, if that makes sense. Again, this is something that there's different books and podcasts and groups and a million things to kind of delve into that a bit more, but I just want to kind of touch on it in my experience. And you will have come across this as well. There's lots of stuff out there about the bottom line is what's most important, the hustle culture, get up at 5 a.m. If you're not up at 4 a.m. you've already lost, like all this kind of stuff. And that squeezing as much as you can out of yourself and people and is the most important. Money is king. Money is the most important thing. And I've come across the other approach, which is one I'd say I subscribe to more, which is around fairness and which is around reciprocal business, like helping each other up. There's enough for everyone, and not subscribing to the kind of lack mentality around things, but subscribing to the fact that there's an abundance for everyone. And even if there are people within the same sector as you or the same industry, of course there are elements of competition that can show up in business, but I prefer to be in the mindset of there is enough for everyone. There will be people who enjoy my approach more and who want to work with me, and there'll be people who don't, and they'll find someone else, and that's okay. It doesn't mean if someone goes and chooses something else or another coach or whatever that I've lost out. You know, it just means maybe it wasn't a good fit. It doesn't mean that there's less for me or I've lost, if that makes sense. So I've really thought a lot about the mindset around that, and I've thought a lot about the money side of it, you know, again, what this episode is about. So I don't tell this story for like a pat on the back or anything, but at one point I had a wellbeing role. It wasn't called that at the time. And I received like a payment for that, like a monthly payment. And because I didn't feel like I was getting enough done, or I wasn't getting to where I wanted to be, I spoke to my management at the time and said, let me give up that payment and use the time instead. Let me give up that payment to pay for cover so that I can get out of the classroom and use that time more effectively for developing the well-being within the school. Now, someone said to me, oh, that's a very altruistic thing that you've done because, you know, it's a salary and da-da-da. I don't feel like I should have had to do that. I feel like I should have, the time was always more important to me at that point, you know, to get out and do what needed to be done. It didn't work out the way that I wanted it to, but at least I tried. Now, the thing about it as well is like, then I came to thinking about, even within teaching or the industries where it's people-centric. And again, this goes back to what I was saying about a lot of pro bono work. There's a lot of unspoken stuff around, well, it's for people's mental health, so it should be for the people or for the children. Again, with teachers, you know, it's like there's this thing that I read about called compassion tax, and it's because you're in it for the outcome, not the income. And I'm like, that doesn't wash, because, you know, other industries, for example, within finance, people get paid for what they do, you know, teachers get paid for what they do, but there's this certain thing that's kind of unspoken, that there's just stuff that you just do because it's for the kids. And I've noticed along the time, you know, when I've worked in the wellbeing company and in my own company, I've had people reach out before and ask if I can do a talk at a school, and I'm like, sure. And I want to highlight this with the fact that while I was teaching, I did over like 50 conferences, and none of them were paid. They were all above my teaching role and the wellbeing role and the masters at the time. And it's because I'm passionate about what I do. I believe in it. I wanted to get out there and, you know, talk about it. But now I'm not in that position. Now I'm in the position where, you know, what I earn is what pays my bills. And also everything that goes into the company pot is utilised again for things for the business, you know, resources for the kids or different things. And I've had people that don't even reply to me when I say, yeah, this is my fee, or is there a budget for this? And then people just don't even write back. It's like, I've had also talked about that my curriculum that I offer is free, but there are charges in terms of the training, because I want the staff to be trained in the wellbeing stuff for themselves before it even gets near the children. And again, people just don't respond then, because they're like, well, it's not free, is it? Or somebody actually said that. So there's this whole taboo thing. Let's not beat around it. Like, I want to make money. I want my business to be successful. I want to be able to afford things. You know, I don't want to live on a shoestring budget like I've been doing recently, because it's for the company. But also, when there are financially abundant times, it means that you can do more pro bono. It means that you can do more for the community. So that's striking that balance. I still do free things at times because it matters to me, but I still find ways to give back when I receive. But the point that I'm trying to make here is, like, you can do both. You can make a good living and make a good earning and make an impact. It doesn't need to be one or the other. And so many there are industries that really lean on the goodness of the altruistic nature of humans to try and spread the word and do whatever they're doing for the benefit of the collective or the greater good. And some people might exploit that along the way. And again, it's not always the people that you come into contact with. It's the decision makers at the top who are in charge of the budget and pull the financial strings. So I think what I'm trying to say is, like, through the money mindset element, yes, I've become really good at budgeting, forecasting, but also recognizing the value in my work. And that touches back onto imposter syndrome and finding your self-worth and having moments where I'm like, when I don't have enough sign-ups for the clubs, I'm like, oh my gosh, is this because it's a rubbish idea? And I know that's not the case. I hear people tell me this is great, like we should do this and da-da-da. But for whatever different reasons, at times it doesn't come off, and that's okay, because it just gives me something else to learn about. But I think the whole thing is, like, especially as a woman, I'm like, you can do both. You can earn an abundant amount of money and also do good things and really enjoy what you're learning. Like, that's a really important thing to me. And talking about money, in a sense, shouldn't be taboo, but also I am against it being the most important thing. That's just like my own kind of personal thoughts around it. And that brings me to the next point I've written down, which is like the emotional side of money. So, of course, at the beginning of term, when I've had that period of time waiting to be like, oh, is this club going to run in this school? Is this club going to run in this school? And some of them haven't come off because there's only maybe been 3 or 4 sign-ups, and either it just, not so much it isn't financially worth it, because there are a couple of the clubs that are running that do have 4 and 5 children in it, but for different reasons, the decision's been made for them not to run. I do have a panic at that, like I mentioned before. I'm like, what's wrong? Like, what could I be doing better? But then I've also seen the clubs, the exact same clubs, fill up, have waiting lists in different schools, and for whatever reason, the alignment is just worked for that place in terms of, maybe it's a non-club day for the school, a non-paid club day, so there's more children available to join. There's just different things. So that can be quite emotional. I have to really sit with myself and be like, what is the emotion around this? Is it fear of what you're offering not good enough, or is it the financial fear? Like, so it's just the panic and really thinking about the emotional aspect of that and sitting with it. And this kind of goes full circle to what I was talking about before. Sometimes there's a guilt around charging for the wellbeing work that I do, especially when it comes to one-to-one coaching. Like, I really, now I don't even know what my hours are. I'm way past the accreditation hours, and I still haven't taken the accreditation, and I must do that. But again, that's my own thing, procrastinating around paperwork. Like, I should have that and more. I just haven't done it. But a lot of those coaching hours, are paid coaching hours, and I still battle with myself because I'm like, it's not the main income of my business. So does that mean that I shouldn't be doing it? And it's like, get over the guilt, and it comes back to, you are able to charge what you charge because of your 15 years teaching experience, almost 10 years studying well-being. The bit of paper that says I've got a master's in it is important, but it's not, if you know what I mean. But I've got it, and I've got the learning that came with that. So yeah, it's like getting past that thing of charging your worth. And again, some people might on the outset look in and think, it's an hour club, and it's a story. It's called, one of the clubs is called Story Seeds, and it's reading a story and doing an art activity at its most basic explanation. But that's not what the payment's for. The payment is for like I've just mentioned, the 15 years bunch of stuff that is culminated in being able to design that club in such a way that it impacts children's knowledge about their own well-being in a way that they can receive it using teaching strategies and different things, so there's a whole lot of stuff that underpins it. So yeah, one of the emotions is guilt and getting over the guilt, and now I'm really much better at saying, no, this is what it's worth, and I won't accept different from that, because it's like this cost for whatever it is matches the service or the offering that's been given. So yeah, that was quite a difficult one to get through, but I got there. And also then on the other side, it's the honesty around the joy and the relief when something fills up. Like when I hear that I've got a waiting list for a club, I'm like, okay, take that and know that that is because people see value in it for their children. People see value in it for themselves as a parent, or people see value in the coaching for themselves as an individual. So yeah, that's important to celebrate the wins as well. Yeah, and then I've written down the deep learning curve. Even being able to call yourself entrepreneurial, or even being able to call myself a founder of a business, like that used to stick in my throat a lot, because again, like one of the episodes, I'll be like, who are you to say that? So it's like the learning curve of your worth, and sometimes the personal feelings of that can impact who you are in the business element. So I still do a lot of work around self-worth and personal growth and confidence and things like that. So yeah, the emotional side of money, there's definitely a learning curve around that. Okay, so financing my own life, and I always make a point of, because one of my blocks used to be, it would be easier if I was married and I was on a spousal visa, which is a really, like, I don't know what other word to use other than cheeky, but you know what I mean? It's like a really, I don't know what the right word is, a way to look at that. It was just an excuse, because then as time went on, I met more and more people who had done it all themselves. And I used to have a really kind of poor me part of myself that was like, oh, you do everything yourself, pay the mortgage yourself, like feed you just do it all yourself, but I'm like, well, actually, give yourself some praise for that. It's strong and brave to be able to do that. So I had to really kind of speak to myself about that. And even though I look back and think, yeah, it has been brave, and there's been times where I've been like, oh gosh, wouldn't it be easier if I had this help, or I had an investor, or I had a partner, a business partner. Yeah, maybe, but then again, that would bring its own learning. So I just really need to stop at times and appreciate where I am and what I'm learning in the moment. And when something changes, it's like, take the learning from that. So it's a work in progress. It's hard. This is the hard stage of the first year, which I knew was going to come because I'd read things and listened to people. It's messy and it's unpredictable, and finance in terms of income is not steady. It's up and down and up and down, and it can be a huge big chunk of something, and then it can be a whole lot of nothing for a couple of weeks after. So it's been able to be comfortable with that and believe and know, and this is a real important thing, is like that belief in what I'm doing, and I believe in it, and everything else is going to follow. But the other thing that I've written down is the freedom, and that's something that's really lovely for me, is the freedom of choice and the freedom of choosing what I believe in and zoning in on that. And there are things that used to happen in teaching that I totally didn't agree with and really didn't work for me or sit well, but in that element I was kind of bound to the system which I signed up for, So I think one of the real joys of being a founder is the freedom. And I imagine at one point I will have like more mentors, or maybe even partners along the way in different projects and things. And I'm really looking forward to learning from them, and also having my conviction be challenged by others who see it in a different way, but in a way that's going to be reciprocal and works for both, rather than feeling like I'm just kind of stuck and have no choice but to do something a certain way. So that's definitely one of the benefits. So this episode's been a little bit longer, half an hour, but the thinking point or the reflection point, I'm actually maybe not offering something for you other than what I've shared in the episode, but I'd like to ask for something. And what I've written is, if you've ever managed to handle, or you have tips for handling like financial well-being, if you are a founder or have started your own company or your own venture, whatever it is, what are some of the ways that you've found to get through the harder points? And tell me, I'd love to hear what some of the real high points are. Or even if you're in a career that you love, like, what are the high points for you that have made it really worth it and really make you remember why you've chosen that thing? So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Last week I had the episode where I just combined everything together, like the comments and conversations that I've had, but I'd love them to be more frequent so that I can just kind of, write more about them, maybe on socials, or if you get in touch, I can keep it anonymous and just share some of the points, because again, listeners who might not want to do that will really benefit from the conversation that comes. Anyway, thank you so much, and yeah, look forward to hearing from you.